Hey guys, I'm Calluna, and welcome to the final Game of Thrones episode breakdown for Season 6. Holy shit, so much happened in this episode, and thank God, because really, up until the last few episodes, most of the storylines hadn't really changed that much. So, without any further ado, let's dive into Episode 10, The Winds of Winter. King's Landing. We open on a faraway shot of the Sept with no music or any talking, just the sound of the bells ringing to indicate a trial. We then see the key players of the trial getting ready: Cersei, Margaery, Tommen, and the High Sparrow. The somber atmosphere created by the silence, as well as the reluctant look on Tommen's face, foreshadow the tragedy to come. Remember Varys' words about the bells back in Season 2? They ring for horror. We then get some dramatic choral music a la every fantasy epic ever, as people enter the Sept or continue making their way there. In the crowd, Margaery stands with her father and Kevan Lannister. The High Sparrow leads the other Septons to their seats, and Loras is brought in by the Faith Militant. Tommen doesn't leave his room, choosing instead to mope. Cersei puts on her badass supervillain dress all the while. I'm sure that has no underlining meaning. No. Loras confesses to all his crimes instead of having the trial, and offers to join the ranks of the Faith Militant, giving up his title and lordship. Mace is understandably upset, while Margaery is holding back her anger as well, as the sparrows carve a 7-pointed star into Loras' forehead. As Tommen finally gets the courage to leave, the mountain prevents him from doing so. Margaery is mad at the High Sparrow for mutilating Loras. Apparently, this is what her plan all along was: make herself seem a devoted follower of the Faith in order to get Loras out of King's Landing and back home to Highgarden. And we see that the High Sparrow is a complete lying prick. Just as Cersei had mentioned in an earlier episode, he doesn't keep his word. Margaery put her trust in the High Sparrow, and it has cost her far more than she knows. I'm sort of disappointed Margaery doesn't really seem to have any real plan in mind. The secret note to Olenna suggested there was more to come, at least that's how I had read that scene initially. Now though? When Cersei doesn't show up to the trial, the High Sparrow sends Lancel and a couple other Faith Militant to retrieve her. Lancel spots a kid running away from the Sept, deems him instantly suspicious, and follows him alone. Meanwhile, Pycelle gets distracted by one of Qyburn's little birds, and follows her to Qyburn's lab, believing he is there to meet up with the king. Yeah, meeting there rather than, literally any other location not this suspicious? Thank God no one likes you, Pycelle. Qyburn then has his little birds come out from the shadows, sporting daggers and stabbing Pycelle to death. Now, admittedly, it's a really cool scene with how the kids come out of the shadows and Qyburn being smug as hell, but what was the point? Why did Qyburn feel the need to lure Pycelle here, rather than let him make his way to the trial? He knows what Cersei has planned and what the consequences will be. Why bother then? I'll come back to this in a bit. Lancel follows the boy into the tunnels beneath the Great Sept, but gets stabbed and falls down. Man, Pycelle can take like 30 hits, but you were paralyzed with just one? Either that kid is related to Ezio Auditore, or Lancel is a weenie. Lancel sees the caches of wildfire, though it's hard to say if he actually knows what it is or not. Margaery senses something is wrong since both Cersei and Tommen aren't at the Sept. Margaery knows not to underestimate Cersei's wrath, having been a victim of it herself. She knows the one thing she cares about in King's Landing is Tommen, so if he isn't there, then they all might be in danger and they should evacuate the Sept. Of course, the High Sparrow is too arrogant to consider Margaery's plea, and if we really stop to think about it, it's kind of a miracle she'd even think of that. Margaery has no clue about the wildfire, so the fact that she wants everyone to evacuate could just be seen as her panicking about nothing. She's right, of course, as we know, which makes the tension of the scene all the more impactful. Margaery tells everyone to leave, but the Faith Militant prevent them from leaving. Margaery keeps Loras at her side, obviously worried about him. This is really sweet. We know how much she cares about her brother, and in their final moments she's keeping him with her. Lancel sees that some small candles in a small pool of wildfire are the igniter, and he tries to crawl to it and blow it out in time. Margaery and Loras look at the High Sparrow, who for the first time is beginning to look uncertain. Unfortunately, the fire ignites, and we see the wildfire completely destroy the tunnel like in Bran's vision. Guess he can see the past and the future, huh? So the entire Sept and surrounding area is engulfed in a green explosive fire, killing tons of people. Margaery, Loras, Mace, Kevan, the High Sparrow, Lancel, the Faith Militant, and the majority of the nobility are completely gone. Cersei looks on thinking, yes, this was a good day to break out my burning people dress. So as I posed earlier, why did Qyburn have Pycelle killed at the dungeon rather than just letting him be on his merry way to a big green inferno? It's difficult to pinpoint Qyburn's motivation here. Did he do this because Pycelle was already late and wouldn't make it in time for the blast? Did he do it out of spite, since Pycelle always thought poorly of Qyburn since he was kicked out of the Citadel? Or, since Pycelle has been around since the days of the Mad King, maybe he could have warned the trial attendees in time? Hard to say. The book has a version of this scene, but it makes more sense. Spoilers for the end of Dance of Dragons. It's actually Varys, not Qyburn, who kills Pycelle. Varys doesn't travel with Tyrion to Essos. In general, the friendship between Varys and Tyrion is more a show development, one I actually really like. Varys has the children kill Pycelle and Kevan Lannister in order to drive more of a wedge between the Lannisters and Tyrells, revealing he wants Aegon Targaryen to take the throne instead. Varys admits he doesn't want to kill Kevan out of spite, but his death will suit his needs, keeping Cersei in charge and making horrible decisions while making the Tyrells begin to fight back against her rule. So it was cool to see the show homaging the scene and just how creepy it is, especially with the choral chants in the background. But when you really stop to think about it, it doesn't make a lot of logical sense. Tommen also sees the blast from his room, completely shocked, as one would be. Rather than staying to comfort her son, who in 10 seconds has lost his wife, brother-in-law, father-in-law, uncle, and great-uncle, Cersei chooses to visit the one person she kept alive, Septa Unella, who is bound in a dungeon. Cersei confesses all of her crimes that she's committed and brings in the Mountain. She tells Unella that she won't be killing her anytime soon, leaving her trapped with the Mountain, who finally removes his helmet, showing how monstrous he looks now. So, we know the Mountain enjoys murder and rape. So, if he isn't supposed to kill Unella, then it's safe to say he's been left to rape her. Ugh. As if the giant fire explosion wasn't enough to show how far Cersei is willing to go for revenge, this scene makes it even more apparent. And the flickering firelight behind Cersei in shadow as she talks about enjoying watching everyone burn. Nice touches there, guys. We cut to Tommen staring out the window at the wreckage of the explosion. Since the Mountain stopped him from leaving, it's pretty likely he knows Cersei was involved. Devastated at the loss of his wife, without anyone to truly comfort him, and feeling responsible as the king, Tommen removes his crown and throws himself out the window. One of the prophecies of Maggie the Frog has come true. All of Cersei's children have died before her. There's two major pieces still left, though. The younger, more beautiful queen taking all she holds dear, and the Valonqar killing her. I've discussed this in my Cersei Lannister prophecy video in more detail, so check that out for more. I'm curious to know if the younger queen was Margaery, since technically she had stolen away Tommen from Cersei even in death, or if that younger queen still has yet to appear to her. Cersei only cares about herself, her children, and Jaime. All Cersei has left to care about is Jaime, or her power as the ruler. Unless she holds herself only as dear? Either way, something to consider for next season. The twins. The Frey and Lannister armies celebrate their victory at Riverrun, with Bronn's much-needed humor still not enough to break us up from our dour mood. He's jealous Jaime gets all the ladies' attention, like the totally not suspicious hot lady who gets a close-up, but that won't be important later. Walder stops by Jaime's table, telling us that Edmure is back in his dungeon. Poor guy. Hope he at least got to see his son first. Then, to remind us about how much of a dick he is, Walder gleefully recalls how Robb was killed and tries to make buddy-buddy with Jaime by calling them both Kingslayers. Unlike Jaime, who is haunted by his choice, Walder has no problem with being called a Kingslayer, since for him, it's showing that people are taking him more seriously. Jaime gets fed up with this and tells Walder that if the Freys screw up again, the Lannisters won't support them. Cool little camera moment from this scene. Walder asks where the Starks are now. We then cut to an up-close shot of Jaime, but in the background we see that hot girl from before walking through the shot. Cool little foreshadowing for a later scene. King's Landing. Again. Qyburn has recovered Tommen's body and Cersei asks to see him. At first, we see her keeping her cool, but when Qyburn asks her about a funeral ceremony, her eyes begin to water a bit and she tells him to burn his body, then spread his ashes at the sept so he can be with his brother, sister, and grandfather. Now that Cersei has lost her children, Jaime is going to be the only thing to possibly keep her together. Old Town. Sam, Gilly, and Sam Jr. have finally made it to Old Town. Love the giant, totally conspicuously covered sword there. The Citadel is sending out white ravens to all the major noble houses to let them know it is officially the start of winter. Remember, in the world of Game of Thrones, winter can last for years and years, which is why it's so vital that the ravens be sent to all the houses. They head straight for the Citadel and are greeted by someone who's like a mix of a Vogon and a Monty Python sketch. Sam being his adorably awkward self did actually make me laugh a bit, which was a nice little reprieve. The Citadel somehow hasn't been informed about Mormont's death, and the meet and greet guy isn't terribly impressed with Sam. He writes in the updated information, telling Sam the Archmaester will be told about this irregularity in process. Ooh, I hope we get to see Archmaester Marwyn next season. He's this really cool maester who isn't put off by magic and seems like a really interesting character for Sam to meet. It's kind of sad when you see the guy just cross out JR's name in the book. To him, it's just another thing to be written over. Sorta makes you realize how quickly a life is forgotten in this world. The maester tells Sam no women or children are allowed in the library, and Sam just kinda leaves Gilly there waiting for him. So no plan? Really just gonna make the girl wait there for you? Nice to see Sam's improvisation at Horn Hill having gotten him nowhere. Anyway, Sam gets to have his bell moment as he looks out at the massive library. Kinda looks like it was more built to be pretty than functional, but hey, who cares? Hopefully Sam will find some information about the White Walkers quickly. It takes years for maesters to receive their chains, and we kinda don't have the time for that. If Marwyn is introduced, perhaps he can help Sam find what he needs? Learn how to make dragon glass, or wildfire, or find some other plot device to get rid of the White Walkers? Winterfell. One of the White Ravens transitions us to Winterfell, where Davos confronts Melisandre about burning Shireen. Mel admits that she did what she believed to be the Lord's will, and she does seem to be a bit regretful about what happened. Davos is having none of it, telling her that a god who asks to burn a little girl is evil. Davos wants justice for Shireen's death, while Melisandre reminds him that if it wasn't for the Lord, then Jon wouldn't be alive. It's a back and forth of wills, with Jon ultimately deciding only to banish Melisandre and send her south. Not exactly sure where Mel is gonna go after all this. We've only seen her attached to someone she believes to be Azor Ahai. She could head back to Ashai, maybe meet up with Kinvara and the other priestesses to report back in. Maybe on her way down she'll run into the Brotherhood and Thoros again. Or maybe she'll run into Brienne, who is less likely to hold back against her now that Mel isn't under Jon's protection. Either way, I doubt we've seen the last of her. As Jon watches Mel leave, Sansa meets up with him. He offers her the Lord's Chambers, and Sansa tries to have him take it instead. I think she ends up with it in the end because she doesn't really fight back against his second argument. And she should. She's the Lady of Winterfell, not just as a Stark, but also as a Bolton. She apologizes to Jon for not letting him know about the army earlier, and they seem to patch things up in a really touching moment. Jon and Sansa shippers are furiously writing away right now. And I mean, they do kind of look like a mirror image of Cat and Ned here. It's not that surprising. We even get some cute smiles as they say winter is finally here, reminding us about how Ned would never stop repeating the Stark motto. Really sweet and quiet moments like these really help to balance the show. Action-packed battles are awesome, but you also need calmer scenes like this to really make a show great. Dorne. I am legitimately surprised we had another Dorne scene this season. After the awful way the show handled the Dorne plot, I was a bit nervous to see them come back here. The Sand Snakes have invited Olenna Tyrell, which is a bit surprising considering the long-standing bad blood between the Tyrells and Martells, though this isn't really addressed that much in the show. Well, Olenna has heard about the disaster in King's Landing as she is dressed in funeral attire. The future of her house has been completely wiped out by Cersei, since the show has only Loras and Margaery as her grandchildren, despite having a couple other siblings in the books. Olenna is pissed, and Ilaria understands Olenna's need for vengeance against the Lannisters. Olenna, being the mind of the audience here, wonders why the hell she should trust the women who killed their own princes, which is a perfectly valid question. I guess the show was trying to show us a unifying strength behind these powerful women, but I'm not really crazy about how all of it was handled. Olenna putting the Sand Snakes in their place is amazing, showing just how boring and terrible they are by comparison. Then Varys shows up, being the brains behind this alliance, in order to give Dany more allies, and even better, more ships. Now the Lannisters will have to face a Targaryen, Greyjoy, Martell, Tyrell force. Good luck with that. So Dorne's entire storyline just gets absorbed into Dany's, which is about what I was expecting once they decided the Dornish book plot wasn't good enough for the TV show. Sorry, still kind of bitter about that. I wonder if we will even see any of the Sand Snakes again after this season. The less of them, the better, I guess. Let all their scenes just be Olenna Tyrell hanging out with Varys. Meereen. Dany has finally figured out what to do with Meereen. Break up with Dario and have him keep the peace in Marine, while the people choose their own leaders. What? Marriage prospects will help her win alliances in Westeros, while the second sons help her forge alliances in Essos while she's in Westeros? I honestly don't expect the people of Marine to keep her ideals for very long. Do they expect her to fly back over on her dragon if they don't? I guess Dany's trying for a Cold War strategy here? Dario does love Dany and is upset about her decision, trying to convince her out of it, but eventually realizing her resolve. However, he does figure out that Tyrion was the one to suggest this, though he doesn't hold it against him. Dany goes to chat with Tyrion, and it's weird that they're having such a meaningful conversation despite there having not really been a ton of communication between these characters. I'm guessing the writers just want us to believe they reach an understanding quite early. Dany says she's kind of afraid of how easily she'll let Dario go, which just makes me think back to how sad she was to send off Jorah by comparison. Tyrion tells her, despite being a cynic himself, he believes in her. Again, not a ton of conversation, but I guess after watching a woman climb up on a dragon and fly, twice, you might be a believer. Dany gives him a pin she commissioned for him, signifying him as her new Hand of the Queen. Aww. It's cool to see how much Dany appreciates Tyrion's input. It's one of the few times Tyrion is actually being acknowledged. The twins. Again. Walder Frey is served another slice of meat pie by the suspicious hot lady, and he wonders why his sons are late to meet with him. We find out that she managed to kill them and bake them into the meat pie, waiting until Walder had eaten a slice before revealing a finger in it. She is revealed to be none other than Arya, revealing her name to him so he knows who will be his killer. She slices his throat and gleefully watches him bleed out. So I both liked and hated this scene. I hated it because it was a lame way for Walder to go out. And the teleporting Arya from Braavos to Westeros was annoying, but the showrunner said that they're doing that to save time. I can see they want to do that, but here it's just kind of boring. Obviously, book readers wanted Lady Stoneheart, and Arya is sort of fulfilling that role. I mean, there weren't many options for who was going to kill Walder. As soon as we saw the preview last week, we knew he was done for. It was either going to be Arya, the Brotherhood, Brienne, or Jaime. Jaime would have been friggin' awesome, but yeah, tactically it wouldn't have made much sense. The Brotherhood showing up would have been nice, but we know they're heading north, same with Brienne. So really the only choice was Arya, so it really wasn't a surprise at all. What I did like about it though, was the manner and circumstance of his death. It's actually a callback to Season 3, Episode 10, the one right after the Red Wedding. Bran tells a story about a king who offended a cook while visiting the Night Fort. The cook killed the king's son, baked him into a meat pie, and fed him to his father, who ate it unknowingly. The cook was cursed by the gods, not for killing the son or having the king eat his son, but for breaking the laws of hospitality while having guests in your home. Bran tells this story and it cuts to Walder Frey eating while watching his servants clean up the blood from the Red Wedding. As soon as I saw the pie, I remembered Bran telling that story to Jojen and Mira. It makes sense that Arya would choose this for him since she probably heard this story from Old Nan like Bran did back in Winterfell. Walder Frey killing Robb at the Red Wedding mirrors that story perfectly, so it's kind of cool how they went full circle with that. There's a number of logistical problems still, like how Arya learned to cook a meat pie at all, how she managed to kill the sons, cut them up, and bake them with no one else knowing. But I assume this falls into the same issues we've had before of wanting a really cool scene, but ignoring some of the logistics of getting there. Still not really pleased with Arya's storyline this season. I think they could have saved the Walder Frey kill for another time, but I guess they want to move Arya's story along. And of all the people left on her list, Frey was the one she would know where he was most likely going to be. Now it's a matter of deciding if she's going to continue her killing list, or if she plans to head back home to Winterfell. My guess is more revenge list. Winterfell. Again. Littlefinger goes to Sansa, who is sitting at the weirwood tree, and she thinks back to when all she wanted was to leave Winterfell. She asks Littlefinger what he wants, and we finally get an answer. He wants to be on the Iron Throne with Sansa as his queen. Well, that's awfully boring and predictable. We've seen him stare at the throne and Sansa enough times to have kind of figured that out already. Lame. He tries to kiss Sansa, but thank the gods, she pushes him away. He keeps trying to drive her and Jon apart by bringing up her trueborn name versus his bastard one, but she just walks away from him. You go, Sansa! Stay away from that creep! Thank goodness Sansa is starting to make some good decisions here. Trying to take control right away would be the worst thing right now. Now that the North will be unified, they need to focus on the fight for the Dawn, not petty squabbling over castles and lordships. I was really hoping Littlefinger could be taken out sooner. Sansa rejecting him could lead to some bad shit happening later. I'm kind of surprised that he didn't guilt trip her since his army did come to the rescue, but good for Sansa taking the initiative. The North. Oh hey, Bran's gonna have one last storyline before the end of the season. How's he totally gonna ruin everything this time? Well, Benjen delivers him and Mira to the Weirwood tree near Castle Black, the one Sam and Jon made their vows at. Benjen tells them that he can't pass through the wall's gates because protective magic keeps the dead back. This is why the White Walkers haven't been able to get past the wall. However, we know that the Night's King mark on Bran allowed him to gain access to Bloodraven's lair, so my big concern is having Bran pass through the wall, and that being the key to letting the White Walkers finally cross. Bran, can we try not to screw up absolutely for a season, please? Anyway, he touches the Weirwood, and we finally get the conclusion to the Tower of Joy flashback. After killing Arthur Dayne, Ned rushes into the tower to find Lyanna in a bed, the sheets covered in blood. We do get a quick shot of Ned putting down the sword Arthur Dayne used, so I'm wondering if this is a nod to how Ned returned to that family sword in the books. Lyanna has just given birth and is dying, probably from blood loss judging by the amount of blood shown. She whispers to Ned, his name is, then we kinda can't hear a bit, then it continues, if Robert finds out, he'll kill him, you must protect him, promise me, Ned. The nursemaid hands Ned Lyanna's son. We are then immediately juxtaposed from a shot of the baby to a shot of Jon Snow. So yeah, the R+L=J theory has been confirmed. It's kind of weird that they also didn't specifically mention Rhaegar as the father, but it's pretty obvious based on what we know about how Lyanna got to the Tower of Joy. So now Bran officially knows Jon Snow's true parentage. Perhaps this will be part of why he travels past the wall. He needs to relay the information to Jon somehow. We did have the scene of Sansa at the tree, so I wonder if he's going to try and play tree telephone and use that to communicate with his siblings. Hopefully most of Bran's story will involve dream jumping because he isn't really that compelling of a character otherwise. Winterfell. Finale. After that juxtaposition shot, we see Sansa and Jon sitting at the head of the table, watching as the various lords argue amongst themselves. Now that winter has come, the various lords want to return home, having believed that the war in the north is over now that the Boltons have been defeated. Jon retorts by saying the others won't wait, they bring the storm. The lords are still undecided until Lyanna Mormont shames a bunch of them for not having helped earlier, the Manderleys, Cerwyns, and Glovers in particular. She proclaims Jon as King of the North, Stark name or not. The others all rally behind Jon, proclaiming him King in the North, including Davos, who only one episode ago had suggested believing in kings might not have been the best idea. Sansa looks pleased with the men rallying behind Jon, but then spots Peter giving her a weird look. Her smile fades. Now some people are taking this to mean that Sansa might be second-guessing letting Jon be leader over her. I really hope that's not the case. I'm hoping that the look on her face is more worry for Jon, wondering what Baelish might be scheming against him since basically Sansa chose Jon over him. Hopefully if the two of them can manage to work together and trust one another, they'll be successful. We see the parallels to Robb being crowned king in the north here, so it's definitely a bit of a tense situation. Hopefully they will learn from the mistakes made from the battle with Ramsay, as well as Robb and Kat's decisions during the War of the Five Kings. Now that we know Jon Snow's true parentage, this will definitely change things, especially once he finds out, or if anyone else does first. King's Landing. Finale. Jaime and his forces arrive at King's Landing, which is still smoldering. Jaime walks into the throne room to see Cersei walk like a boss-ass bitch down the way to the throne. Qyburn names Cersei Queen, specifically referring to her as Cersei Lannister, not Baratheon. Jaime watches from the sidelines, obviously a bit conflicted and confused about what's going on. Cersei is giving him nothing but an icy cold stare. Is this how we're finally going to drive these two apart? We know what lengths Jaime went to when Aerys tried to use wildfire. How will he react after learning what Cersei did? This cannot end well for the twins. Narrow Sea. We see all of Dany's combined forces in her fleet heading to Westeros. Yara and Theon representing the Greyjoys, Grey Worm representing the Unsullied, ships with the Tyrell and Martell sigils to show their allegiance, the Dothraki doing a surprisingly good job despite being on water, the three dragons flying overhead, and of course, Dany's small council comprised of Varys, Tyrion, and Missandei. Now that she has her fleet and her allies, Dany's journey to Westeros is finally on its way. So yeah, holy crap guys, this was such an amazing and intense episode! Definitely the best finale for Game of Thrones and definitely made my top 5 overall. We finally have some story progression, yay! The first 20 minutes of this episode were so well directed and had me on the edge of my seat. I was really sad to see Marjorie go out of everybody, if only because if somebody deserved to live, it would have been her. But yeah, doing a lot of cleanup for some of the secondary characters, huh? This was a really bloody season overall. So many named characters were offed. I think it's interesting that our women in power positions were all in black clothing this episode. Some were in mourning clothes, like Illyria and Olenna, so that makes sense. But Sansa, Daenerys, Cersei, all of them were in black clothing. Perhaps to signify a maturity or a darkness to them? A common theme in this show is that you need to do bad things sometimes in order to survive. All of these characters have committed some kind of crime in order to get power for themselves or their family. Illyria murdered Doran and Trystane. Olenna helped murder Joffrey. Sansa hid the Vale army and had Ramsay eaten by his own hounds. Daenerys murdered all the Dothraki lords. And Cersei destroyed part of King's Landing with wildfire. Dany wearing black I think is the most significant. Normally we've seen her in blues and whites. White for purity, blue for remembering Khal Drogo. But now she's finally donning black, one of the 2 colors representing her house. I think this is important for her, not only to show her maturity, but her really coming to terms with her heritage. Thanks to help from Tyrion, Dany is finally finding a balance between being a ruler and a conqueror. So I think I've gone on long enough for today's episode. Obviously a lot happened, so kinda makes sense as to why this video is a bit longer than the others. Since we don't have a preview this time, and since this video is already so long, I'll be doing a separate video going through my predictions for Season 7. What major events will I expect to happen? Any new characters I think possibly could be introduced? Overall, I'll break it down, going through each major character's storyline by region and predicting where I expect them to end up in Season 7. So, what did you guys think of the season finale? Were there any parts that you really liked or really hated? If so, what? Who do you think will end up on the Iron Throne next season? Cersei is going to have quite a lot of trouble once Dany's forces come knocking. What predictions do you have for Season 7? Post your thoughts and comments below. Thank you guys so much for joining me on my Game of Thrones episode breakdown videos. These were a ton to do and I'm really glad I was able to make these in a relatively timely manner. Would you guys like me to do these again for the next seasons? Any other shows that you think might work for this video format? I'm always curious to see what you guys think I might like to watch. Can't wait to read your comments later. As always, I'm Calluna, and I'll see you guys next time with my Season 7 predictions video. Bye!
Vision.